In this video, we're going to go through the basics of programming in a Linux environment. We'll cover the following topics: how to read, write, and create, remove and rename files and directories, how to navigate between directories, how to copy files between directories, how to filter files for content of interest. Before we start, let's overview some of the common terminology used by Linux users in case you're not already familiar with it. The terminal is that black box on your computer that you've probably already figured out how to open. This is basically a text-based interface that you can use to interact with your computer. It's like a command center where you can give instructions to your computer using text commands rather than clicking on icons or buttons. The terminal allows you to perform tasks such as navigating through folders, running programs, managing files, and so on. You might also hear this environment referred to as the command line. When you work in this environment, the text messages that you write to your computer are what we call commands. You'll be familiar with folders on your computer, such as the Documents folder. We'll refer to such folders as directories. When you first open the terminal, you might find yourself in a place called the Home directory. This usually isn't where you want to perform tasks, so usually your first step on opening the terminal is to navigate somewhere else. The folder or directory in which you choose to perform tasks is referred to as the working directory. Okay, so now that we've covered some of the common terminology that you'll come across using Linux, let's get started. So you found yourself in the terminal, but where exactly are you? That's always a good question. So the first thing we're going to learn in this tutorial is to find out where you are. That is, in which folder or directory in your computer's file system are you working? If you want to access certain files from the terminal, it's usually a good idea to navigate to the appropriate location within the file system. So once again, where are you? To find out where we are within the file system, we use the pwd command. pwd stands for Print Working Directory. So let's type pwd and press enter. So here we see that we're located in a folder or directory called Uninteresting Things. This is what we call the current working directory, and this way of writing the location of a directory is referred to as the path. So we've just printed the path to the current working directory. But let's say we don't want to work in uninteresting things. Let's try to move to a more interesting directory. To move directories in a Linux environment, we use the cd command. cd stands for Change Directory. If we want to navigate to the home directory, we simply type cd and then press enter. But if we want to navigate to some other directory, we type cd and then enter the path to the directory of our interest. We can also navigate to one directory lower down in what we call the directory tree. To do this, we type cd followed by 2 dots. So if I do this now, I'll end up in this tutorials directory. Let's check that with pwd. Now we can check if there are any other directories that we'd like to navigate to. To see what files or directories are in the current working directory, we use the ls command. So if we type ls and press enter, we see that there are 2 directories here: Uninteresting Things, where we were before, and Interesting Things. Now let's navigate to the Interesting Things directory. To do this, we type cd followed by the directory name or path. Note that since we've already located within the tutorials directory, we don't need to specify the entire path in order to move to the Interesting Things directory. So we use what's called the relative path, that is the path to this directory, considering where we are now. If we were located somewhere else, the home directory for example, then it would be necessary to specify the entire path to relocate to the Interesting Things directory. But for now, it's sufficient to just write cd Interesting Things. Now that we're in a more interesting directory, let's see what we can find here. We previously used the ls command to view the directories that we could navigate to. The ls command prints both files and directories within the current directory. So let's try that again. Here, when we print ls, we see that there is one text file in the current directory called animals.txt. To see what information or content is contained in this file, we can use the less command or the cat command. Less and cat are both commands that display the contents of the file, but they're not identical. Cat displays everything in the file all at once, printing the result to the screen. On the other hand, less allows you to view the contents of a file one screenful at a time, and this makes it very useful for viewing large files or examining the contents of files interactively. So let's try both of these. Less animals.txt. We see that this file is a tab delimited text file with 3 columns. The first column contains an animal name, the second column a number, who knows what that means, and the third column one of 2 categories, scary or benign. To exit the less screen, we print the Q key. Now let's try the same with cat. Here we see that the same result is printed to the main screen, and we're back on the command line. How about we make this interesting directory a bit more interesting by creating some of our own files? There are many ways in which we can create files from the terminal. To create empty files, we can use the touch command. For example, if we try touch file1.txt, we'll create an empty file in the current directory called file1.txt. Let's check that with ls. We can see that the directory now contains file1.txt as well as animals.txt. But if we less file1.txt, we don't see any text. The file is empty. We can also write some content directly into a file as we create it. We can, for example, use the echo command to write some text to the terminal. For example, if we type echo, my favorite animal is a squirrel, we will see this printed to the screen. But we can also direct this text into a file as we create it, using the greater than symbol. So let's try echo, my favorite animal is a squirrel, greater than file2.txt. Here we've created a second file, file2.txt, which should contain this sentence. So if we less file2.txt, we see that this is true. File2 is quite interesting, but file1 is empty, so we want to take it out of the interesting things directory. Let's create a new directory within interesting things called test files. To create a new directory, we use the mkdir command, followed by the name of the directory we want to create. Let's try that. mkdir test files. Test files is now a new directory, but it's currently empty. Let's try to copy file1.txt into test files. To copy a file to a new directory, we use the cp command, followed by the name of the file, and then the path to the directory where we want to place it. Let's try that. cp file1.txt test files. Now let's navigate to text files. cd test files. Let's see what files are here using ls. We can see that file1.txt is now in this directory. Let's return to the interesting things directory. To do this, remember we can simply type cd followed by 2 dots, and then we get to the directory one step lower down in the directory tree. Now we're back in the interesting things directory. How about we remove file1.txt from this directory, since, as we said, it's not that interesting. To remove a file or delete it, we use the rm command, followed by the name of the file. Let's try that. rm file1.txt. If we want to remove a directory, note that we needed to include a -r option within this command. So if we wanted to remove, for example, the test files, we would write something like rm-r test files. Now let's look at how we rename files. File2.txt isn't a very informative name, so let's call it something different. To rename a file, we use the mv command, followed by the original name of the file, and then the name that we want to change it to. So let's try that with mv file2.txt myfavoriteanimals.txt. Now, if we run ls, we see that we still have these two files, but file2.txt has been renamed. Now let's look at some basic commands that we can use to work with our files from the terminal. Let's work a bit with the animals.txt file. We've already seen how to read this file with less and cat, but sometimes we're only interested in certain parts of a file. Let's say we only want to read the very start of the file. To do this, we can use the head command followed by the number of lines that we want to read. For example, if we type head -2 animals.txt, we'll see the first two lines of the file. Similarly, if we want to see only the end of the file, we can use the tail command. For example, if we type tail -3 animals.txt, we'll see the last three lines of the file. Since animals.txt is a tab-separated file, i.e. it contains the number of columns separated by tabs, the cut command can come in useful if we want to extract certain columns. To extract certain columns of the file, we can use cut -f. For example, to print columns 1 and 3, we can use cut -f 1, 3. To print the first two columns, we can try cut -f 1 to 2. Let's say we want to extract certain lines of the file. Maybe we're only interested in benign animals. For this we can use the grep command. So if we want to view only lines containing benign animals, we can write grep benign animals.txt. Another way of doing this would be to exclude lines containing scary animals. This can also be done using the grep command with the option -v. If we try grep -v scary animals.txt, all lines containing scary animals are removed. Note that we're not actually modifying the files here. We're only extracting parts of the files of interest for our own viewing. We could also save this section of the file containing benign animals to a new file, for example one called benign animals.txt. To do this, we can use the same technique that we used before to create text files. This is directing the output of one command into the file using the greater than symbol. For example, if we type grep benign animals.txt and then use the greater than symbol to direct this into a file called benign animals.txt, now we've created a new file, benign animals.txt, which contains only these lines. Let's do the same thing for scary animals. Now when we type ls, we see that we've created these two new files. Let's view them again using the less command. Less benign animals.txt, less scary animals.txt. Okay, so far we've carried out tasks in the terminal one step at a time, but often we want to combine multiple commands into one. To do this, we can use what's called the pipe. The pipe is this vertical bar character. We can use the pipe to connect the output of one command into the input of another command. Let's take a look at this in action. Let's say we want to view animals.txt, and then we want to select only benign animals, and then we want to view only the first three animals. To do this, let's try less animals.txt, and then the pipe, so pipe the output into the command to grep benign. First of all, let's see what this does. We see that it's the same as what we did before with grep benign animals.txt. Let's add one more pipe to this command to take only the first three animals. So use the pipe and then head -3. How about we want to select only benign animals and then sort the animals alphabetically. For this we can use the sort command, but let's try that again with a pipe. Here we would write less animals.txt, pipe, grep benign, pipe, sort. Here we see the output of all benign animals in alphabetical order. Let's try one more thing. How about we want to know how many benign animals there are? For this we can use the wc-l command. This command counts the number of lines. So let's try this again with a pipe. For this we could write less animals.txt grep benign pipe wc-l. So there are 7 benign animals. And scary animals? Thankfully only 3. So there you have it. Those are just some of the most commonly used functions of the Linux terminal. Navigating the terminal can be confusing at first, but once you've gotten the hang of these basic commands, you'll find that Linux also contains many more benign animals than scary ones.